Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Christopher, and the new president of the United States.
Your seats while the president and official party depart the platform.
And this is now where President Biden is escorted by the new president of the United States. And President Biden will depart, along with some members of his family, to California and Santa Ynez for a vacation out there with his family. The president's inaugural address, he promised a golden age, in which he said a revolution. Changes, and I think later today at Capital One Arena, if not in the next hour or so, we will see him sign what has been described as a blizzard of executive orders and actions on everything from the border to energy to also government efficiency and issues about gender and more.
Yeah, in the spirit of getting right to it in his second term, the president kind of skipped the inaugural address and jumped right to the State of the Union, listing the promises and plans, which were ambitious, disruptive, and every inch what he was elected by his supporters, his core supporters, to do. But like a State of the Union, you know, the proof will be in the pudding, the proof will be in the doing. We also have the experience of the first administration and the infrastructure bill, which was much discussed and never came. As a tonal matter, we've been talking a lot about this day, which has a kind of special grace that hovers over it. Political grudges are paused. Donald Trump benefited from that grace in the ceremony, but as is often the case, he did not feel obliged to extend the same grace or ceremony. He talked at some length about the horrible betrayal of the president who was sitting right over his shoulder. And so the question is, as we've seen before, does he enjoy the benefits of the office, but not the obligations? And I should note one other thing. He took an oath today. He's the only person ever to take the presidential oath who has been accused by the leaders of his party in the House, the Senate, and his own vice president of actively working to overthrow an election and therefore break with that oath. What
does that mean?
Well, you make an oath to the Constitution, and the Constitution says there will be a free and peaceful transfer of power. In working to overthrow the election, he sought to thwart the peaceful transfer of power and undo the $81 million votes. Mitch McConnell, the leader in the Senate, Kevin McCarthy, the leader in the House, and his vice president all said he broke with that oath. Well, he's taken the oath again. Same promise has been made again. No one in American history.
McCarthy said it too at the time. I think that's why so many people struggle. I think you always hear from the country they want to be united. You know, he goes to the Biden White House. They have a bunch of crab cakes and ribeye steak and Thumbelina carrots. And then he comes out and insults Joe Biden while he's sitting there. He did the same thing with the Barack Obama.
The lunches that coming up, not the lunches coming up. We're going to have that, yeah.
No, but I'm talking about, I'm just going through the course of the day, the tea that they had, which turned out to be a lunch. You keep hearing people say, I would like the country to be united. And, you know, when you talk to people, he starts right away saying the golden age of America begins now. I did like that he acknowledged that it was Martin Luther King Day, and that under his leadership, Martin Luther King's dream is going to come true. Well, I'm curious about which dream exactly he's talking about, because he proceeded to say America's decline is over. We're going to reclaim the public. He was saved by God to make America great again. Listen, the American people spoke. He won. He won the electoral vote. He won all the swing states. Everybody understands that. But now we're at the point where I think people are saying, how are you going to unite us? And if I'm sitting there as someone who, and I'm sitting there as a Democrat, or if you didn't vote for Trump, where do I fit into this conversation? I think many people are wondering that. People at this point, guys, I believe, just really want to be united. We know that he won. Everyone, I think, has accepted that Donald Trump won this race fair and square.
A jubilant moment for the Trump family as their father is returned to office. I want to bring in historian Douglas Brinkley. Douglas?
Yeah, well, I think it was really the speech about the golden age of the past America, and now he's saying it's today. He had all the tropes of American exceptionalism thrown into the hopper there, pushing the concept of manifest destiny and the settling of the West, that God had ordained it, claiming that we're going to grab, and I think this is a newsbreaker, he is saying we're going to take back the Panama Canal. That William McKinley funded it, Theodore Roosevelt built it, and it's ours, and China's controlling it. And right straight on through, American MAGA is American exceptionalism on steroids. But look how we've changed as a society. I mean, of the days of Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, climate activism, it's just gone. And there's a void that President Biden's left that no Democrat right now is able to fill. Nancy Pelosi not being there, Michelle Obama, AOC not there. You're feeling there's a little bit of a void, but the speech was, I think, better than his first in the sense that the tone of it hung together well, and it is just, though, not really a unifying speech, but it masqueraded as one.
Donald Trump is now the president of the United States, and President Biden is set to leave from the east front of the Capitol shortly. And Robert Costa, because we're going to be spending so much of the next 4 years talking about Donald Trump, perhaps a moment to talk about how Joe Biden sees these final moments and his legacy.
Nora, I was with President Biden in the White House residence in August, and he takes pride in his record, what he has done to navigate Russia's war with Ukraine, massive spending on domestic policy, and he believes he has been a protector of democracy in his view of how the American system should work. But when we turn to President Trump, this was a speech of action. As the president told me over the weekend, just watch what I'm going to do. Stay calm. Washington should stay calm, he said, but just watch. On the horizon now is an overhaul of the tax code. Republican majorities, albeit paper thin in the House and in the Senate, pursuing a major package on the border along with tax reform, a total upending of many agencies and departments across the federal government, and a scaling back of the size of the federal government. You see the Trump family there. But this was a speech of action, and he explicitly detailed what he is going to do. And for people who haven't been paying attention to the campaign or to the transition, this was Trump underscoring, I mean business. Policy changes are coming, and they will be sweeping.
And I just want to note that Hillary Clinton there and President Bill Clinton there are shaking every member of the Trump's family, despite the things that they have said about her. And I think I'm told by people close to the Clintons, it was very important for them to not only show up, but to show the sort of graciousness that normally accompanies former presidents, and to make sure that they publicly support this peaceful transition of power. There is some news at this moment about those last-minute pardons by President Biden. So I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Ed O'Keefe. And Ed, we're watching lawmakers right now, Democratic lawmakers and others set to see President Biden off. What have you learned about those pardons?
Nora, it is not hyperbole to say that as the now former president was taking the stage in the rotunda, his White House was sending out word that he had issued more preemptive pardons, this time to 3 people and their spouses who've been with him his entire political career. His siblings, James, Valerie, and Frank Biden, and their spouses, saying in part that amid all the talk about political retribution, he felt it necessary to do this despite his respect for the rule of law. In the remaining moments of the Biden presidency, phone calls made by CBS News to try to figure out why he did this. And one source familiar with the decision tells me the outgoing president made it to pardon his siblings and their spouses just in the last few days, amid the, quote, continuing talk and concern about possible prosecution and persecution by the new administration. The source said there was no specific recent action or statement by the now president that prompted Biden's decision, and the source didn't know whether the former president's siblings requested the pardon. All 3 of them have been active in the now former president's political career. James Biden was his fundraiser in his first campaign. His sister Valerie famously was the campaign manager, and then, of course, helped raise Hunter and Beau Biden after their mother died. Frank Biden, who served in the Clinton administration. All of them, in one way or another, have worked in lobbying or influence peddling in the last several decades. And there had been talk, of course, over the course of this most recent campaign, that the Biden family, or as Trump and his associates called it, the Biden crime family, should face consequences for their alleged actions, none of which in any real way has ever panned out. He, of course, also preemptively pardoned his son Hunter, and we should point out, issued thousands of pardons or commutations to everyday Americans who had been seeking legal relief from the White House over the last several years. Biden will leave office having granted more of them than anyone else. But this 53-year political career now ending as he prepares to take the East Front walk, get on the helicopter, head to Joint Base Andrews for a final goodbye. Notable, he did not walk down the steps of the East Front. Remember, amid all the concerns about whether he can ascend staircases, especially in this tough weather, notable that he did not do that. Nora?
And it should be noted, too, the ages of both of these presidents.
True.
Donald Trump, 78 years old, now becomes the oldest president elected at age 78 and will serve into his 80s as well as Joe Biden, who is now 82 years old, just having had his birthday in November. And he will now join what is now Special Air Mission 46. It's only called Marine One when the President of the United States is on it for that final flyover of our majestic United States Capitol to see those final moments. And while there has been much accomplished in the Biden administration, even though the American people did not view that so, there were 17 million jobs created, certainly digging the country out of massive inflation that some say he helped with some of his big spending programs. There is much that those within the Biden circle hope that the long lens of history will show that he has achieved more than people give him credit for.
In one of his last interviews, Nora, he was saying he should have done a better job on messaging, letting people know all of the things that he had done and that he accomplished.
Every president says that. It's a kind of standard button they push. And, you know, that some of that might be true if every voter had metaphysical certainty about the things done in your White House. But also, it's very true in American politics and very hard that when the economy is against you, you can't talk your way around that.
And there was always 2/3 of the country thought we were heading in the wrong direction. But to Gail's point, too, I do think that the Biden administration suffered from an ability to communicate their achievements, not only from the principal level, but also from the staff level.
So what will he do now? We hear he's going to California. What will he do now?
Delaware has always been home for former President Biden, and he will return to Delaware. Loves Rehoboth Beach. Mm-hmm. It's a place where he made that decision to exit the presidential race. He'll also spend time in Wilmington, I'm told. He has a lot of connections in Philadelphia nearby. Family lives in the Philadelphia area. So he'll be in and around Delaware and Philadelphia, and will surely make his way from time to time back to Washington, D.C. What a political life for President Biden. And people close to both President Trump and President Biden have told me that these two men share a lot more in common than might be fully understood. They have both been on the public stage since the 1970s. They have been through ups and downs. They are at their core political survivors. And that led, I'm told, to a relatively friendly Oval Office meeting when they met in private. There's an understanding that they have both endured, even if they both disagree with each other. And that we're just witnessing as the former Vice President Kamala Harris's motorcade just left. And we are already getting a sense of how things are changing here in Washington and around the world. Margaret Brennan, I know you have some new reporting.
Sure, and a historic departure for the first female vice president of the United States, Nora. In terms of what's changing, we're already seeing our Camila Montoya Galvez is confirming through Homeland Security officials that all of the appointments that had been scheduled for interviews for asylum seekers, those seeking to enter the United States legally through this app that was created by the Biden administration to slow the crowds at the border and get them in through appointments called CBP-1. That's already been just totally taken offline. So 30,000 appointments that had been scheduled for migrants to go through and have it actual legal process gone already. We are seeing changes in these executive orders that could actually create some questions about how does one legally enter if legal pathways are being shut down. This is something, Nora, that came up at the debate, if you remember, that you and I had with the vice presidential candidates. A campaign promise, once again, to do away with some of these things that the Biden administration put in place to deal with what has been a historic hemisphere-wide migration crisis with a crush of humanity unseen since World War II.
So, Margaret, are you saying people that want to enter the country legally can now have lost an avenue to do that? Is that what you're saying? Effective now?
Well, in the view of the Trump administration, they believe that the Biden administration's interpretation of the law was not legal, but they had created this pathway under their interpretation of regulations.
Yes, Senator Blunt.
Well, the traditional avenue for asylum was to go to any American embassy, American consulate, ask for asylum there. This idea that you can come to the border, say, I qualify for asylum and get in is very new. And there's a reason that we're walking away from that. It doesn't work. There's also a reason that in every European country with their border problems, that's been a huge issue in every election now for a decade. And we have to do something differently than we're doing. What we're doing is not working.
No, great point in terms of not just the hemisphere-wide migration crisis, but it's really worldwide. You see it through Middle East, through Africa, moving into Europe. But in terms of the processing in this day and age, the poverty that exists for some people prevents traveling to the capital to go to an embassy. Their workaround was create that app on your phone.
Well, yeah, but living in a
us.
poor or dangerous country is not a reason for asylum. You have to personally have some unique fear. People all over the world will come to the United States if there's a way to get here for good reason, but you can't let we're the most open country in the world on asylum. And we have made a joke out of the asylum process by what we've been doing at the border.
And that would need to change through law or what was just announced in executive order by Donald Trump.
It's a full conversation to have. Yes, it's a full conversation to have about the process and failures of the immigration system that have largely been the product of the United States Congress's failure to get something done for decades, even though multiple presidents, Republican and Democrat, have tried valiantly to do that indeed. And now we see the helicopter, known as Marine One, and the president is in it, is now Special Air Mission 47 departing, Special Mission 46 departing the east front of the Capitol as Joe Biden leaves Washington for the final time, ending a half-century career as a public servant. I want to bring in Scott McFarland, who's there. Scott?
Standing in the footprint of this helicopter about to take off on the east front of the Capitol, it really is quite a closing chapter to the peaceful transfer of power. It was 4 years ago where the rioters first fought with police in this very spot, disrupting the peaceful transfer of power in 2021. It has been secured here today with President-elect Trump, now President Trump, side by side with President Biden. Watching President Biden board the helicopter for this aerial liftoff, this one-of-a-kind American image and moment on the east front of the Capitol. If you can still hear me, there are police and fire EMS workers surrounding this area taking pictures on their phones. And it feels something akin to a severe thunderstorm or small tornado in wind strength. The metaphor of a change in Washington.
I can't remember the year that I was there in that exact same position. And just to think about it, just to think about how President Biden feels at this moment.
That's what I was wondering, Laura. And I wonder, do we know who else is on the helicopter, if anybody? Who else is on it with him? Do we know?
Dr. Biden.
He's about to pass by the old home place, too.
Yeah, besides Jill and Joe Biden, do we know who else could possibly be on that chopper? Because normally it's not just the two of them.
He's going to look down at his old house.
Yeah. I wonder what he's feeling and thinking, too, at this moment.
To fly down the Washington Mall, past the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the White House, and then on to Andrews Air Force Base, where I imagine he'll be greeted by other members of his family for that trip out to California and a vacation for the 82-year-old president. I want to bring in Democratic strategist Joel Payne. And Joel, while 49.8% of the country that voted for Donald Trump elated today, winning a popular vote about what's next, there are a number of people who voted for the Democratic candidate and voted for Joe Biden who are expressing sadness today and thinking about this presidency. What happened?
What happened is a big, broad question, Nora, and good to be with you all. I think what happened is Democrats fundamentally lost two discussions with the American people. One was the disruption and the norm busting of Trump. Was that disqualifying? And also, was the return to normalcy that Biden promised and attempted to deliver, was that good enough? And I think Democrats lost the public discussion on both of those points, unfortunately, for us politically. And I think when you have a public that is very rambunctious and angry and is disappointed and has felt like government and lots of institutions have failed them for years and years and years, you arrive at a point today where Donald Trump can ride grievance back into the White House. And I think that's what we're witnessing with this inauguration. That's what we're witnessing with the messaging he's leading with. And I think that's what Democrats will have to face for the next 4 years.
It's that word grievance that I'm stuck with. Bob, I know that you said that he laid out an action plan. It was a plan of action. Can you lay out a plan of action and still just let go of the grievances? Is that not did it feel like a grievance speech to you or no?
The grievances of President Trump certainly, Gail, coursed throughout the remarks today. But what's so clear to me, based on my reporting on his inner circle, my conversations with the president, is that he truly believes, and you could argue it, that he has a mandate and that Washington has accepted his mandate by giving him Republican majorities. And he believes that his critics, wherever they might be, will be relatively muted in the years to come.
And we're about to hear from President Donald Trump address Emancipation Hall, but I want to head first to Weijia Jiang at the White House, who has some new reporting about the new Trump team that's already there at the White House and at work. Weijia.
Nora, that's right. As all of this was unfolding at the Capitol, of course, there has to be a physical transition of power as well. And so by the busloads, 3 busloads, in fact, new incoming administration officials were brought over here to the White House from the Capitol. We also know that a van of national security staff drove onto the White House campus before noon, and they went right into the Situation Room, according to aides who told CBS that they got right to work. We also took note that right at the strike of noon, if you clicked on the White House website, the government website, viewers could see a video of President Trump, a montage of him doing various things throughout the country. There was already posted several of their priorities. There was a space for executive orders, which will be filled once he begins signing them. And of course, there is the physical move of stuff as well. There are moving trucks behind us. We were wandering through the West Wing and we could see people bringing things in and out. And we saw some of the last staffers from the Biden administration here as well, including the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. So this was a very smooth transition so far physically, and we expect those staffers to come in throughout the day to be with President Trump. Nora?
All right, Weijia Jiang, thank you. We're listening now to Speaker Mike Johnson, who is in Emancipation Hall. Let's listen in for a moment.
With hundreds of thousands of our closest friends. But our disappointment is well overcome with our excitement for the future that we feel today. We have the chance to make the next 4 years the most consequential period in our nation's history. And as Speaker of the House, it is my great pleasure, my great honor, to introduce to you the man who will lead us to this new golden age, the decisive winner of the Electoral College and the popular vote, the 45th and the 47th, and the greatest president of our lifetimes, Donald J. Trump.
And we're expecting another set of remarks from President Donald Trump because there is a huge overflow crowd. Let's bring in Nancy Cordes, who is there in Emancipation Hall. Nancy?
That's right, Nora. Emancipation Hall today serving as a very elegant overflow room, about 1,300 seats that have been set up here for people who would have had a bird's eye view had this event been held outside, but instead watch the events unfold on the big screen here in the room. It's a very partisan crowd. We have glimpsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. We have seen Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia in here. The crowd applauded throughout the president's inaugural address as if they were in the same room that he was in. And interestingly, Nora, a few minutes ago, when we saw Special Air Mission 46 lift off, there was a big round of applause about that as well.
All right. Nancy Cordes there, and just remarking about the number of governors that are there in Emancipation Hall, applauding as the President of the United States and the Vice President there gather with many of their supporters. And looks like we're going to hear from the Vice President.
Being here, and was that a hell of a speech or what? That was, man. That was a good way to start it off. You know, I didn't know exactly what the president would put in that speech, and I hoped to myself that he wasn't going to hold back, and sir, you didn't hold back. That was a hell of a way to start the next 4 years. But I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for the president and for all of us, thank you, thank you, thank you for making this possible. We love you. We wouldn't be here without you, and we're going to make America great again together for the next 4 years. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, having stood outside for about 5 minutes to wave goodbye to the Bidens, thank God we moved that thing indoors because it was a beautiful ceremony and it was cold as hell outside. So, sir, 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
No, he's right. I said, oh, look at this beautiful sunny day. And we blew it. And then I went outside and we were freezing. You would have been very unhappy. The sun was very deceptive, I will tell you. It is cold out. And I'm sort of saying, you know, that was so beautiful today. We could do it there every 4 years. Does that make sense? I don't know. Because, you know, the outdoor thing is really good, but it gets a little cold around this time of the year, as some people have noticed. And a lot of time through it. There was no suffering in that room. It was 72 degrees. It was perfect with the best acoustics I think I've ever heard in a room. This is not so bad either. But I just want to say, you're a younger, far more beautiful audience that I just spoke to. And I want to keep it off the record. I want to keep that off the record because I don't want to have all those big shots up there. I don't want to think you're more powerful than them. You look better than them, and I love you. Now, we just had a great time. We just had a great day. This was amazing. You know, when you think we took a journey, I mentioned in the speech, a lot of people said that was not a journey that was possible, and it was indeed possible. I didn't really know too much about what they were saying when they said that, but a lot of people felt it. And we hooked up with JD very early. I watched JD over a period of time. I endorsed him in Ohio. He was a great senator and very, very smart. The only one smarter than him was his wife. That was, I would have chosen her, but somehow the line of succession didn't work that way, right? But now she's great and he's great. This is a great, beautiful couple and unbelievable career. I just said to him, you are very upwardly mobile, because he hasn't been doing it that long, but he picked it up so quickly. Remember, the first week was a little bit like the fake news was hitting him really hard. And I said, oh, this may be tough, but after that, it was smooth sailing for him. He took on everybody. He took on the meanest. I don't want to use the word corrupt because we're into a new system, so let's wait till the corruption begins, because it will. But he took on some pretty mean people, and he handled it well. I want to also congratulate Mike Johnson for the job that he's doing. See, we gave him a majority of almost nothing. And then I said, to make it tougher on him, let me take 2 or 3 of the people, right? I said, he'll only have to suffer with that for about 3 months. How are they doing, by the way? Are they, is that moving along?
Totally unified.
I said, do you mind if I take this one, that one, and a couple of others? He didn't mind. He can handle it. No, he's a man that's liked by everybody. I've never met a man like this. You've got how many is it, 219 or 220 or something? 220. And of the 220, 219 really like him. I noticed he got 1 negative vote once about 2 weeks ago. But I think even 220 like him, if you want to know the truth. And that's very unusual. I know a lot of nice guys in Congress, and they have 35 people that hate him. So if you have 35 people that hate you and you only have 1 or 2 or 3 votes, you'll have 5, I think. But that's going to be like, the good news is when we get to that 5 number, it's going to feel like a massive majority. You could be really nasty to a couple of them at least. So it's going to feel like hitting your head on the wall and stopping. It feels so good to stop, but he's done a fantastic job. And Steve Scalise he's our hero because, I was with him. You talk about being shot. I was with him. He got some bad ones, and his incredible wife, and she really loves him. You never know about that. I've been with other people that were doing poorly, and the wife is like looking at her watch. She can't get out of the hospital fast enough. How's he doing? I don't know. He's all right. That woman was a mess. She was crying and crying. No, they're going to take him. They're going to take him. I told Steve when he finally woke up, it was a while too. The doctor told me it was the most blood they've ever transfused in any patient. They've never done anything like it. And here he is, the picture of strength, right? And he's been a great friend of mine, right? With a family, because of a family. And what a job you did. It worked out pretty much better than we even thought, right? And I did have a couple of things, to say that were extremely controversial. And between JD and Melania and anybody else that heard, please, sir, it's such a beautiful unifying speech. Please, sir, don't say these things. I said, I'm telling you, it's going to play great. They say, you're right. For this group of people, it's going to play great. You're the only ones I hurt by not, but we had some beauties, didn't we, Melania? She said, sir, calls me sir when she's angry. No, I'm only kidding. I better say I'm only kidding, or the press is going to pick that one up loud and clear. No, but she said, no, I think it would be terrible. It's such a nice speech. I think it's, it all depends on your delivery. How was the delivery? Was it good? But she said it's such a beautiful speech. You can't put things in there that you were going to put in. And I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action on the J6 hostages. See a lot of action. And I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with the pardons of people that were very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs, where they literally, what they did is they destroyed and deleted all of the information, all of the hearings, practically not a thing left. They deleted all the information on Nancy Pelosi having turned down the offer of 10,000 soldiers. You wouldn't have needed 10,000. You could have had 500, and it would have stopped. Because we may have had 1 million people that day, the people that were there. You don't see any photographs, but we have a lot of great photos. But you don't see those photographs. They don't put them in. They show the people at the Capitol. But I was talking about that. I was going to talk about that. They said, please don't bring that up right now. You can bring it up tomorrow. I said, how about now in front of I'll bring it up right now. This little time delay is good because we're getting great reviews on the speech. Now watch. They'll take the speech and say, I didn't like it because he left there and he talked to people. But we're giving you a little more information than we gave upstairs. But no, they pardoned a lot of people. They pardoned, before we even get to today, they pardoned, 33 murderers, absolute murderers, the worst murderers. You know, when you get the death sentence in the United States, you have to be bad because they don't give it much. And he pardoned almost everybody having a death sentence. And if you went through the crimes that were committed, you wouldn't even believe them. The level of violence, the people that were killed, the innocence of people that were killed and children killed by these people. And he pardoned them for whatever reason. He spared them, but they didn't spare the people that they killed. And, you know, who knows what happens in the future. It's one of the worst because a lot of times they let them out early after that. You know, they say you're going to be in for life, but then all of a sudden they get let out for good behavior and then they go on a rampage. You know, it's one of those little things, right? But I was going to talk about that. But I was really going to talk about the level of, you know, what's going on. Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to help a guy like Milley? Why are we doing Milley? He was pardoned. What he said, terrible what he said. Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying. I looked at him. I remember years ago, he was actually on my side. And then one day, you know, when you don't want to kill people in wars, they turn against you. Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment, you know, where her father works, right? And but what she did was incredible. Think of it. They destroyed and deleted all of that information that went on for almost 2 years against Trump. And the reason they did, because it was all false. Like the person that said, I tried to strangle a Secret Service agent. That's one of the toughest human beings I think I've ever seen. I actually had a friend saying, please don't change that, sir. You are the coolest sucker in history. Remember, she said, I put my hands around his neck because he wouldn't go to the Capitol. Made up fiction. And I was rebuffed. And the guy on the right is a massive weightlifter, probably stronger than me. Do you think he's stronger than me, honey? You know who I'm talking about. Possibly stronger than me. Slightly younger than me, like, I won't say how many years because I don't want to talk about that, but a lot of years. But I had a friend that said, why are you disputing that story? That's the coolest story I've ever heard. That I would attack a karate champion, get slightly rebuffed, and then throw my arms around a guy with a neck about this big. Even though there are bars, you know, there are bars, you can't really do that anyway. So I wanted to talk about that. But all of that stuff got deleted. And the reason it got deleted is they were all caught in lies. You know, Secret Service testified and they said it didn't happen. Actually, the two guys were very embarrassed. They're suffering because their friends are saying, did Trump really do that to you? But they gained a whole new respect for me. But it was just make-believe stuff. And there were a lot of make-believe stories made up. So rather than suffer the wrath, like the story with Nancy Pelosi, I offered her 10,000 soldiers. She knows it. She admitted it on tape that her daughter made. She's a videographer or whatever you call her, which I'm glad she is. Oh, she can't be in good stead with Nancy. But Nancy said it was my responsibility as she's leaving the Capitol. She said it was, and it was. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. But I offered them up to 10,000 soldiers, even more. One time I said more, as many as you need, but you needed 400 or 500. If 4 or 5, you 10,000, that would be more than the number of people there by lot. But we offered her 10,000. Think of it, 10,000 soldiers. In other words, J6 wouldn't be J6. There would have been no J6. But she rebuffed them. She didn't like it. No, she didn't like it. Maybe she wanted that to happen, but she's guilty as hell. And now we would have to go through the process because they destroyed all evidence. They deleted everything. There's virtually nothing left. The other fake story and so many other fake stories. And many people came out on our side, and those people now would got to find them. There's nothing left. So that's a criminal offense. If that were a civil case, it would be a criminal offense. If that happened civilly where you did that, it would be a criminal offense. So I decided I'm not going to make this speech complicated. I'm going to make it beautiful. I'm going to make it a unifying speech. And then when they said we have a group of people that are serious Trump fans, I said, this is the time to tell those stories. You know. So anyway, but seriously, I'd like to, I think it was a tremendous success. I think we're very lucky we put it inside because it is really cold. We just went to the helicopter out of respect to something that's taken place for a long time. I guess it's as old as helicopters. You used to get into a stagecoach, now you get into a helicopter. Times change. But it's pretty old custom. And it's a beautiful custom, actually. It's a beautiful custom. I wish we could have had a better relationship. I wish we could have had a better relationship between Republicans and Democrats. I was with Senator Schumer. I said, Chuck, I think it's time we all start getting along a little bit because it doesn't make sense. I mean, we literally never get a Democrat vote. They never get a Republican vote, almost. And although there is a bill coming up very shortly that we have a lot of Democrat votes, right? It's going to be a very beautiful bill. We're going to have a deciding, I would say, within a week or so, I think. And it's going to be a very good bill. You all know what I'm talking about. So I just want to thank you all for being here. You have been our fans from day one, all these people all over. You've been our fans. This has been there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like it. This has been a movement like no movement ever in history for probably any country, let alone this country. You know, if somebody's running for president, and if they go out and they announce they're going to Arizona, they're going to Nevada, they're going to someplace, if you have 200 or 300 people, that would be standard. Ronald Reagan would go out. I mean, outside of the last couple of days where people get a little excited, but even then you have a couple of thousand people. But if you're going to go someplace, any place, any one of the swing states, any one of the other states, I mean, how about the non-swing states? We won Alabama by 48 points. We won Tennessee by massive numbers. Wyoming, we won by numbers that are, nobody's ever seen numbers like that. And, you know, places like California, we did great, but when they send out like 38 million ballots and nobody knows where the hell they're sending them, and then they come pouring back, the whole thing. You know, they passed a law in California that if you work in an election bureau and if you so much as ask for a voter ID, if you say, sir, ma'am, could I please look at your voter ID? They have the right to put you in jail. You're a criminal. Can you believe that? There's only one reason that happens. They want to cheat. So they had it where voter ID wasn't accepted. But now if you even ask for it, this is seriously a bill that was just signed. It passed in their legislature, and it was signed. And I think when we get things cleaned up and we get back to a little bit of normalcy, I'm going to ask the speaker to really get involved, because I think we would have won the state of California, because, you know, if you look at my numbers with Hispanic, we're at 56%, and we were winning. We won the Texas border that had never been won. As the governor said, he's doing a good job, the governor, by the way, of Texas. But as the governor said, it hasn't. Oh, did I get lucky? Did I get lucky? Supposing I said, you know, he's not here, but the governor of Texas has done a terrible job. Wow, look at you. You mean we couldn't get you up in the front row? I tell you. Supposing I said, JD, the governor of Texas, he's not doing his job. You heard what I said. See, I didn't know you were there. I said he's doing a great job. He's doing a phenomenal job. But now you're going to have a partner that's going to work with you, because you didn't have, not only didn't he have a partner, he had people selling the wall, right? We have a fence structure that we worked on, the governor worked on with me. And I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I wanted a nice precast concrete, 40, 50 feet high, like a beautiful, could have been a T-shape, Y-shape. I love construction. I wanted that sucker to go up maybe 50, 60 feet. It would have looked beautiful, a nice Y shape. And they said, the problem is, sir, they climbed that like a rabbit. I said, what do you mean? No way. And they brought some of these guys out. They climbed it like And the other thing is you hit it with acid and the thing will disintegrate. You know, they have things for concrete. So they needed very hardened steel, very special steel. And then they needed 7,000-pound concrete inside that steel, inside that steel. And then they have a rebar that's the toughest steel made, very hard to cut. So this is why very little is cut. I mean, it's right. And then they put a anti-climb panel on top. I hated it. I said, it's so unattractive. And I said, why would that work? I don't believe it works. Then I went to watch the Border Patrol, gave a display. We had actually two sets of climbers. The guys that climb up walls with drugs on their back, I mean, they got like 60, 70 pounds of drug and they go as fast as you can walk. They go bip, bip, bip. Or we have Mount Everest type climbers. And honestly, the drug guys were much better. I couldn't believe it. The drug guys blew them away, right? But it's true, the anti-climb panel, they couldn't get around it. They just couldn't. You didn't have it. So sometimes you sacrifice beauty for efficiency. And we did. So we built this wall, and we built over 500 miles of wall. That's why we had such good numbers. The famous chart that came down, very thankfully, the chart that came down on my right, Governor, had I not looked over there, I'm not speaking right now. You might be speaking here. You want to know the truth? You, JD, and we got a lot of great people in this party, but I got very lucky, but we had the best numbers we've ever had. But I bought, what happens is when you fill it up, it's like water. You fill it up. Now we have 571 miles of wall. And they would always say, when we renovated a wall, so there'd be like a piece of plywood sitting there for 60 years, or a 2x4 sitting for 60 years on the ground and rotting. Because, and they'll say, you didn't build a new wall. Here we're building, incredible. I recognize so many of you, it's so crazy. But this has been a long journey. This was a journey that started in 2015, probably started 20 years before that. People used to say, you're going to run for president? You're going to run? And I always said, no, I don't want. And then one day I said, let's give it a shot. And what I talked about then was the border too. I think it probably was the number one issue for me. Back in 2015, 2016, I talked about the border. And now I talked about the border, but this border is much worse. We fixed the border, it was totally fixed. There was nothing to talk about. 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. The only thing good about it, it showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent. And frankly, historically, this is a much bigger event if that would have gone like it should have. The bad thing about it is some bad things happen, like a lot of people in our country that wouldn't be in our country right now. So, that's the bad part. But I will say that it started in 2015, and right from the beginning, we went to the top. Day one, they announced Trump, and Trump went to number one and stayed there for the whole primary. And then we took on Hillary. She didn't look too happy today. We took on Hillary, a very nice person, but we took on Hillary and we defeated Hillary. And then we did much better the second time in 2020. We got millions more votes. We got millions, like 10, 12 million more votes than we did the first time. No president has ever gotten that many more votes. I got like 9 million more than anybody else had ever gotten. And they said we lost. And because of that, I said to Melania, what do you think? And she said, you want to do this again? And had we lost, and had I thought we lost, I wouldn't do it again, because that's like the ultimate poll, right? But I knew how well we did. And this time we made it too big to rig. It was so big. They tried. They tried like hell in the butt. They tried to do it. And around 9:02, they gave up. Last time they did bad things. At this time, they just said, yes. I don't know if you saw, Mr. Speaker, in Washington, they had placards. They were all set to march. They thought it'd be closer. A gentleman asked me, a very respected gentleman asked me yesterday, how come the polls were so wrong? They showed you winning, but not in a landslide. I said, because people that are true Trumpers are so angry at the whole polling system and at the writers, the fake news, that they don't want to talk to anybody. So when you call somebody from Trump, who are you voting for? They say, it's none of your business. I'm not telling you. And that was probably 40% of the people they called. So they would discard that one, and they didn't show that. And then when the election happened, the vote came, and it was much different, much higher than we're going to win, but they really thought, they couldn't believe the one man said, it was so much higher. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, which is hard for a Republican. I'll tell you who came through. The unions came through. The auto workers were great. The Teamsters were great. The firemen were great. I think almost every union was great. The only one that weren't great, although Sean was great, and the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, was fantastic. But generally speaking, the head of the union was against Trump, but the union would be with us for like 80, 85%. Look what we did with the auto workers in Michigan. Look what we did with the Teamsters. The Teamsters were unbelievable. They were a solid Democrat vote, and they voted for Trump. So we had a great experience. Now we have to go to work and get it done, because we have to do something that's going to be great. We're going to turn our country around, and we're going to turn it around fast. And I think this was a better speech than the one I made upstairs, okay? I think this was better, JD. I think this was much better, and I got to see my friend. So, Governor, take care of yourself. You call me, we'll start working. You know what that means with him? He's going to be calling me tomorrow morning at about 6. And I said, how about next week? You call me, and we're going to get it started real fast. We'll really help you a lot. You've done a fantastic job protecting something which it's not supposed to be for the states. And amazing job you've done. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody. And I have a first lady who's been incredible. I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get hell when I say this, but her feet are absolutely aching. Those heels. And we thought we were leaving. We were going home. Sir, would you be able to go down and say hello to some of your other fans that are here? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Well, did you get to see pretty clearly the picture, I hope? Good. That's good. But because you wouldn't want to make the same speech again, right? But she said, darling, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. I said, honey, let me just see how far it is. I asked the person. Oh, not that long, maybe 400 or 500 yards. That's 5 football fields. I said, can you make it? She said, we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it because we have to go. Right? Right? And then we went out to the helicopter just prior to this and said goodbye. And it's a custom. And the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost her. She was being elevated off the ground. She almost blew away. No. So we all appreciate it because you've been a great first lady, a beautiful and a great first lady. And they love our first lady. JD, whenever I make a speech, I see hundreds of times, we love our first lady. And they do, and they should. She's great. So I just want to thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody. And I felt that I said to JD, should we give him the A treatment, the B treatment, the C, the D, or the F? You know what the F is? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
President Trump completing a remarkable Trump comeback, as I was going to say, and the Trumpian speech, I guess is what we could call it, without notes, going on to what is the so-called overflow crowd. Let's go to Nancy Cordes in Emancipation Hall. And Nancy, he's back.
Nora, I think that's what Trump calls the weave, an unscripted riff about many of his favorite topics. He talked about his political enemies. He talked about voter ID laws. He talked about the cost of rebar. He talked about various people who he spotted in the room, including the governor of Texas. He said that he was eager to talk about all kinds of things that didn't quite fit into his inaugural address, which he just wrapped up a short time ago, but that he knew the folks in this room would appreciate because they are his hardcore supporters and donors. There were times, Nora, where the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, behind him looked a little bit pained, possibly because he's aware that there is an enormous room full of dignitaries upstairs waiting for Trump before they can tuck into the traditional inaugural luncheon.
Nancy, thank you. Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett. Major?
So I think it's worth pointing out, Nora, that there have been rituals today, traditions, scriptures, patriotic songs. But this transition is one done through gritted teeth. With the pardons issued by President Biden just before his presidency ended, he effectively told the country, I believe my family would be criminally prosecuted unfairly by the next president of the United States. And with his remarks just now, President Trump said he still believes those who have either pled guilty to crimes from January 6th or were convicted by jurors are American political hostages. That is the kind of hostility, one administration to another, that is befitting this moment in our history, but is unlike any other in our history.
Well said, Major. Thank you very much. Outside Capitol Hill, and we're looking at some of those dignitaries. I do see Abby Blunt, the wife of Senator Blunt, who is here. And Senator, because you've been on Capitol Hill for so many years previously, as Nancy Cordes pointed out, that Speaker Johnson was sitting there perhaps with gritted teeth because a lot of people are waiting for this luncheon and they are way behind schedule.
Well, and not a whole lot because it's the hardest ticket to get. It's about 200 to 250 people in Statuary Hall. Normally what happens, Nora, is the newly sworn in president goes to the president's room over off the Senate floor, nominates officially the people he's hoping can get confirmed in the next few days, and then goes to this lunch. And lunch is going to be cold, I would guess.
Yeah, but I do think that that's an important point, because while we're noticing sort of the ceremony of this and the speeches, the work of government begins immediately. And the signing of those documents, and there are many people, of course, talking about right now, we don't have an acting Secretary of Defense. We don't have someone in charge of the FBI, as the FBI director and his deputy have resigned. Concerns about the transition period.
Well, I believe that's right. And the Senate goes into session right around 2 o'clock today, so right around now, for the specific purpose of seeing if they can't move some of these along quickly. I think it was mentioned earlier this morning that maybe the CIA Director Ratcliffe and the Secretary of State would be among those that might even be confirmed today. And of course, that answers every question about who's in charge. The more of that you could get done, which is why the Senate's in session today as opposed to in the morning.
And that notably, right out of the gate, two expected to be with Democratic support. And that may be a rarity for some of Mr. Trump's picks. He doesn't need Democrats because he has the Senate majority of 53 seats. He doesn't need Democrats to confirm his picks. But to have right out of the gate, soon-to-be Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a senator expected to be swiftly confirmed, and John Ratcliffe, who had previously served.
Former House member and previously served as the Director of National Intelligence.
So two key national security people on the job relatively soon, it is expected, but we may be waiting. There are still ongoing FBI background checks, Nora, for a number of these picks, including, as CBS just confirmed, the man to run the FBI, Kash Patel. The FBI hasn't finished looking into
What are you thinking, Bob?
This is a president who is returning to Washington. Yes, he has concerns and grievances about the past. But in my conversations with him before the election and after the election and over the weekend, it's so evident to me that what's coming is fast, that Washington is bracing for a disruptive presidency, but in a different manner than what we saw in 2017, where he was still trying to get a grip of how to run a White House, who to put around him. You see, the Republican Party now is totally in thrall to President Trump. They are with him. And you see this also out in the country, in the state